Tune into ESG Matters with Risk Insights, where we explore ESG with impact.
Welcome back to another episode of ESG Matters with Risk Insights. I know what you think. This is not Anushka. Yes, you're right. I am Anthony Idigbe, Senior Partner at Punuka Attorneys and Solicitors. I'm also a licensed lawyer in Nigeria and Ontario, Canada. In addition, I'm a corporate director and I've attended several corporate directorship courses, including some with Anushka at Harvard Business School. It is an absolute pleasure to take over this week's broadcast. ESG is making headways in the legal space due to the role of legislation in driving behavioral change about ESG and climate change. I thank Risk Insights and my colleague Anushka Bogdanov for having me do this week's Takeover broadcast. I will be sharing my experience and knowledge as a lawyer and corporate director about ESG in Nigeria. However, I start with a disclaimer that what I'll be saying is not legal advice or opinion and should not be treated and considered as such. Now, Nigeria relies heavily on the oil and gas sector. The sector accounts for 90% of Nigeria's export income in the first quarter of 2022 and 85% of government revenue. Oil and gas dominates the Nigerian economy, accounting for 40% of the country's GDP. The energy sector also accounts for the largest source of greenhouse emissions. So greening and reducing reliance on this sector is no easy task and impacts the just transition for the economy. Reducing dependence on the sector would affect employment, foreign exchange, revenues, and other macroeconomic factors, creating significant social, political, and economic impacts. Nigeria has one of the largest populations in Africa, with 213.4 million people. And there is heavy dependency on the oil and gas sector. Supply chains are impacted. And as of 2021, 59.5% of the Nigerian population could not access electricity. A shift towards including renewable energy within the country's energy portfolio would play a crucial role in the energy transition. Now, Nigeria is a signatory to the Paris Agreement 2015, following the failed Kyoto Accord. In meeting its voluntary obligation under this Paris Agreement, Nigeria promulgated the Climate Change Act 2021. This act streamlines the much-needed climate change actions and carbon budgeting. Under the Paris Agreement, Nigeria was required to have its own nationally determined contribution following its commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The Climate Change Act sets the roadmap for Nigeria to meet its own NDC, that is, nationally determined contribution targets. The Act applies to both public and private entities within Nigeria's territorial jurisdiction and directs all ministries, departments, and agencies of the government, otherwise referred to as the NDAs, and other entities to implement mechanisms geared towards fostering low carbon emission, environmentally sustainable, and climate resilient society. Now, apart from the Climate Change Act, other laws also affect ESG in Nigeria, and these include the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA 2021. The PIA has stringent provisions against gas flaring, with severe fines for violation. It also provides for environmental impact analysis and environmental plans for every oil field operation. Other laws affect ESG. They include the 1999 Constitution as amended, the Environmental Impact Act, the National Environmental Standards and Regulations Agency Enforcement Agency Act, NESRA, and the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency Act, NOSTRA. Apart from the E in ESG, other laws affect the S, which is the social, and the G, which is the governance in ESG. So, for instance, the NGX, which is the Nigerian Exchange, requires listed companies to disclose ESG compliance in an annual sustainability report. The Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, the FRCN, issued its National Code of Corporate Governance, and under it, companies' boards are required to be diversified in terms of composition. Another important point to consider from the legal perspective is the legal disputes arising from or likely to arise from ESG. We see companies across the globe behaving irresponsibly, greenwashing, and also making opaque disclosures. These impact the underlying companies, the auditing firms, the bond market, the stock market, and the shareholders, and of course, the regulatory environment. So responses by the regulators, the shareholders, and other stakeholders lead to litigation. So we have not seen a lot of ESG litigation in Nigeria, save for the few oil and gas cases. But the big ones are coming, just like what we are seeing across the globe. So how do we navigate the ESG challenges and work towards sustainable energy transition? We are living in an interconnected world impacted by multiple stakeholders. So it is pivotal for the country and policymakers to relook at the future energy mix as the oil demand will drop, with the demand for natural gas increasing drastically due to the net zero targets that the International Energy Agency is estimating. It is therefore urgent to mitigate and remove greenhouse gases from the energy mix, with renewables requiring significant investments and whilst there is increasing energy demand at the same time. So while we benefit from the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, we need to plan our energy transition and portfolio mix as an economy to ensure that we keep our ESG footprint within reasonable limits and within our own nationally voluntarily determined targets. So we need to invest in circular and recycling industries and industries of the future to ensure we future-proof our economy. This will also impact our carbon taxes and carbon credits that we'll receive. We may also face penalties, of course, and we must promote diversification by investing in renewable energy sources and green industries. We should also encourage public and private sector partnerships for sustainable development. These are all major long-term sustainability issues that Nigeria will face and require strategic positioning and alignment with the private and public sectors. In all this, data is vital to creating and managing a robust strategy. So our companies must measure and report their footprint and comply with ESG disclosures. And of course, this is where risk insights becomes quite useful because they help with this data and measurement, etc. Another aspect that will affect Nigeria is the IFRS reporting standards. These have been issued to standardize ESG reporting for companies. By 2025, listed companies will be impacted by these regulations and reporting standards. These regulations will affect the company's brand and reputation. ESG reporting will practically be a license to operate. The board of directors are accountable for companies accurately and transparently disclosing their ESG and non-financial data, helping all stakeholders to understand ethical and sustainable business practices. These stakeholders include asset managers and other decision-making institutions, usually based in Europe and North America. Their decisions or their conclusions based on the data which they have will ultimately affect cost of capital and the cost of funds in the future in Nigeria. Now, in terms of accountability in the face of environmental challenges, a powerful example of this is the Deepwater Horizon oil spill that took place on 20th of April and lasted for 87 days. It has been considered the largest marine oil spill in history. However, we don't need to look at the Gulf of Mexico, for example. We can look at our backyard as Nigerians. The Niger Delta is swimming in oil. Since 2014, ENI has reported 820 oil spills in the Niger Delta, amounting to around 4.1 million liters of oil lost. In 2021, Shell reported 1,010 spills, amounting to about 17.5 million liters of oil lost. This equates to about 7 Olympic-sized swimming pools of oil. Quite recently, on the 11th of June 2023, Nigerian authorities and Shell's local subsidiaries were investigating a recent spill on the Trans-Forcados pipeline. This spill lasted for days and took a week to contain. Within Nigeria, Shell has faced multiple legal battles around oil spills due to these spills occurring in the Niger Delta region. This region has faced constant pollution, conflict, and corruption. The Niger Delta is a petroleum-rich area and has been one of the centers of extensive pollution, or to use a better term, ecocide. Shell was eventually held liable for these oil spills in 2021 and ordered to pay damages to the farmers in the area. But these spills have not abated and continue to pollute the area. It is for this reason that organizations are accountable and financially responsible for their role in causing climate loss and damage. We must continue to protect our world, take accountability, and ensure transparent disclosure. To survive in this new area of governance, we need to do better. By we, I mean everyone, including the government. The government should not just be a regulator. It should invest in the transition towards net zero emissions. It should also fund the private sector to make necessary investments through subsidies, licensing, and other incentives. We are operating in a world run by stakeholder capitalism. We must ensure appropriate policy setting and a robust legal environment to ensure transparency and compliance. ESG is more than just a phrase. It is part of a new era of risk management that is here to stay. Not only does it affect us right now, but it will continue to affect future generations. It has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you again, Risk Insights, for allowing me to dive into the world of ESG and compliance with you and share my insights. Like always, we love reading your insights, so leave a comment, a like, or share this with your social circles. I hope to join you again soon. As Anushka always says, ciao for now.